Hello again. Like it says on the tin, we're going to turn a drone from the Pulsar into a MegaDrone using the Move. And in the last video I did a little bit of this using the sampler, and I've done that again. I do actually have a recording of the drone here on the sampler instrument on channel 4, but I'll get to all of that in a second. The main idea here is again using the sampling capabilities of the Move to take a fairly simple drone. There's a bit going on here and I'll explain all that in a second, but just to turn it into a MegaDrone, because again I'm kind of building a track and this combo keeps drawing me back in. This is the third video that I've done with this combo and it's working really well, and I'm having fun exploring all of its in and outs. So let's get cracking and make a MegaDrone. I've got a few things going on first, so let's just talk about the setup. Obviously the Move is the final output, so stereo mini jack, and that's going straight into the mixer. On here I've got all 4 channels doing something, well, almost. I've got this 4th channel which is triggering the bass track of the Pulsar 23. And what you can see is happening right now is that this is playing and I've got a note, and I've got this note here, and if I press and hold this you can see it's got 7 bars going on and its note length is 112. So essentially this thing just keeps triggering this drone. So let's just have a quick listen. So it's just kind of going on in the background, doing its thing. Then I've got this track which has got nothing on it at the moment. I've just got a drum kit, and this is the track that I'm going to use to make the MegaDrone. And I'm going to use a drum kit, and essentially I'm going to slice a recording that I'm going to do of the drone in here, and then be able to play that in a whole heap of different ways. So we'll get to that in a second. On the 2nd channel I've just got a field recording that I did when I was in Bali of the Kachek performance, and I've got that using the stretch and the stretch factor and a whole bunch of modulation on a clip on that, and so that'll just bring some vocals in when we get to the point of bringing it all together. And then on my first track I've got a drum kit. I really love the snare drum and the hi-hat on the Pulsar. It's really cool, but in the concept of this particular setup I wasn't going to use these as snare drum and hi-hats, instead using them as a component of the drone. So they are patched up in a different way, but what I did do previously was recorded a few different snares, recorded some different hi-hats, so I've got those to do a percussion track. And because this isn't about sequencing and we're not going into that, I've got a few clips made, so when we get to the point of putting it all together, this is just what I'll play, having some of these triggered. I do have a sample kick. I've got a sample kick from the Raymond sample collection. I love Raymond samples. This isn't sponsored or endorsed by them. I just really love their samples. I'll put a link in the description to go and get their samples. A whole bunch of, they've just got really awesome things in a whole bunch of electronic music, different categories, everything from minimal techno to industrial to whatever, and they're just made so well. And there's a whole bunch of videos that they do about how they make their samples, and yeah, really awesome. So I've got a kick going on here. Again, I've spoken about this before, but the Move doesn't really have a side chain as such. It does have LFO tool, or there's an effect that was kind of added in the last update that you can use to sort of duck, but I'm really enjoying much more kind of overloading the audio path inside this and then driving the kick and bringing its volume up and just letting it destroy all of the other frequencies. And the other thing that I've done just on these samples is on the filter and setup, I've turned all of these to a high pass filter, and then I've cut out essentially the low frequencies, just so that the drone's going to be in the low frequencies, the kick's going to be in the low frequencies. These need a little bit of room, so I've just given them a little bit of room to move in the final composition. I'm not going to have time to record a track immediately, but in the next few days I am going to do it with this setup. So that's the move and what's going on. I do have the Ghost working in this particular setup. I've got a bit of distortion, reverb and delay, and previously I've just used the Ghost as like a mono to stereo converter, because the Move doesn't allow a mono input just yet. It only allows a stereo mini jack input, so using the Ghost as a mono input to stereo output converter works really well. But in this case I am using the effects, and I'll talk about, well, let's just jump over and start talking about the Pulsar now as to why. So one of the things that I've done, and the concept with the Pulsar, was the bass channel is the main output. So I wanted everything to go through this and use its circuits and sort of overdrive its circuits to bring a whole range of extra timbre into the characteristic of the drone. And so to do that, what I've done is I've patched the output via an attenuator to jack 6. So here I'm bypassing the internal effects and the internal drive, so that's why I've got the Ghost turned on and activated, and I've got the Pulsar 23 coming out of the number 6, jack number 6, into here, down to here. And so that is the concept here. That is the idea of what I wanted to explore, was what happens when you put a whole bunch of signals into a single channel and when that comes out. And choosing the bass as the foundational drone because it's got these two shape and warp parameters that give it quite a lot of character when they're modulated. So I've got these modulated, the warp is being modulated by the LFO, and I've got the LFO synced from the Move through via MIDI, coming out the 0.25 just to kind of get it really slow and morphing over time. And I've got that to descending square wave to give that almost kind of percussion modulation change. And then I've got the shape being modulated by the Chaos, by the 3-bit from the Chaos. And that's just running free, so I can bring that up and change the rate of that when I need to. So let's just have a quick listen to what the bass is doing without anything else going on. Bringing the Chaos up. So that's happening. Then the next thing was, how do I get some kind of modulation going with the bass drum and turn the bass drum into a drone and then feed that into the bass? And that's what's happening all here. So I've got, first of all, just the 10 volt into the trigger, which gets the bass drum droning on. I've got the output of the bass drum going into an attenuator and then going into the OMG input. And I've got the 3-bit Chaos coming into the WTF input as well. And then I've got the output of this coming over into an attenuator to be able to bring that in or out of the bass channel. So let's open the filter up and have a listen to mixing the bass drum into it. Dynamic that's happening between the feedback and the drive as well. So that's what's happening there. And then as the final two parts is having the snare drum and the hi-hat as being able to bring in extra textures into the drone, specifically in the higher frequencies, but having the tune and having the bandpass filter and the high pass filter on the two channels really gives a broad range of sounds that can be brought in. So let's bring in a bit of bass drum, but then and they're just simply the outs into the ins. That's all that's happening on those. There's no extra modulation or any kind of patching or anything going on to that. And they're just fun to get sort of hands-on and move that through. So that's the basic setup of what's going on here. Got the effects that's happening through the Ghost. So now let's take that and turn it into the MegaDrone in here. So the process that I'm going to go through is essentially recording a longer recording of a little performance on here. So maybe it's a minute, maybe it's a little bit longer, so you have to bear with me. There'll be chapter markers so you can skip through, but I'm going to just sort of do a little perform recording on this straight into here, and then I'm going to slice it, and we're going to look at what the slicing capabilities are of here and how to add these into, turn these into kind of something else. Let me just mute my silly phone. Cool. All right. Well, let's go. Pretty much. I've got this turned down. I'm going to bring it up and get it going. I'm going to hit record on here. I'm going to press a pad and let's go. Done. So there it is. There's my sample. Let's hold down Shift and click the wheel and jump into slice. And we can choose how many slices we want. I'm going to choose 12 for this. I think each slice will be long enough. It's depending on sort of what you want to do and how long you want each section to go for, and the way you set up the hold and the envelope in terms of playing them. I think the basic kind of setup would be 8, and maybe that's what we'll do for this one, because otherwise it'll be too long because there's going to be a whole heap of settings. So let's choose 8 samples. Now, one of the things that I didn't know, but now I do in this process, is knowing that once you slice, the default behavior that happens for each of these is that it chokes them. So it allows you to only sort of play one slice at a time. There's no fun in that. So each slice, I'm going to do a few things too. The first thing I'm going to do is, you can hear that when I'm kind of playing it, it's just going to play through because the hold is to set to infinite. If I give it a little bit less than that and some decay, I can play things a little bit more rather than having the whole slice kind of go through. So that's the first thing that I'm going to do. I'm going to do that to each of these. So bear with me when I just bring the hold down, increase the decay. I'm sure there's a setting. All right, let's just have a quick look. If we go into here, there's a few different things. Envelope mode, trigger, gate. Let's try that. And then the other thing was, see how it's set to choke? Let's turn that to off. That's what I want. So I'm going to do that for each of these samples. Hit this envelope mode to gate, so when I hold it, it's going to do its thing, and then choke off. Gate, choke off. Gate, off. Gate, off. Because I've got to change. Gate, gate, off. Gate, off. Now, the other fun thing in here is panning. So I'm going to treat each of these as kind of like pairs. So this one here, I'm going to pan to the left, and this one here I'm going to pan to the right. This one here I'm going to pan to the left. This one here I'm going to pan to the right. This one here I'm going to pan to the left. You get the idea. And so when I jump back and just fix up the decay on each of these, decay. So now I've got this thing where if I play these two, MegaDrone, because I'll have this going and then these on top. And I can kind of play these to be able to make that work. And you could even, you know, kind of mix across the 4 or 12 or 16 or whichever way you want to go. So, and then the other fun bit is having these, having the drum pads being able to set to play chromatically. And so, you know, we've got this guy going on, but also add some extra sort of harmonics. I won't say chords. I'm sure if there are people out there that could, you know, twizzle the transpose down to different intervals to be able to create chords. I'm so sorry, that's not me. I have no musical talent. Oh my God, I've just let out my secret. Okay, let's keep going, because the other bit that I wanted to do was just set up the effects. So I'm going to have a delay, and we'll do a 16th dub. Filter frequency, let's just bring that up a little bit, and add some delay to each of these. instead of a saturator, I want to just put a reverb, and let's go Parking Garage, Red Canyon, add a bit more extra decay. The room size is at max. In filter frequency is pretty high, so it should get rid of some of the low mud. But again, I like mud, more stereo image, low shelf gain, dry wet. Ooh. Awesome. That's the gist. That's the MegaDrone. So let's just see how that works with this guy going. So if I press play, I've got this clip. I can bring this up, some drive. MegaDrone, because in here I've recorded this as I've recorded another sort of set as a long sample. Some of the things I've got to do is I just wanted to do some modulation over those 7 bars of the filter frequency, but I can actually add the LFO. So let's do the LFO, and the LFO rate's really slow. Maybe just bring it up a little bit. And if I unmute that track, let's go with all of it, and I'll kick the drums in a second too. that's it. Thanks very much for playing along. Pimp my soul. Hit like, hit subscribe. What have I missed? Like, I totally missed when slicing this up around that it automatically defaults to being a choke kit. And as soon as I remembered that or worked that out and turned that off, that just opened this right up for lots and lots of awesome stereo, layered, crazy, fun. So much fun. Thanks very much for watching. Catch you next time. Bye.